Hi everyone. So in this video I'm going to continue on the path of parametricity, except in this one we're going to be dealing with configurations. The configuration manager, as I've explained already, is the third button from the left. If I click on it, sorry, I'm using the same model as I had before because it's easier. And you'll see that the name of my file, which is called plug, is listed at the top, and then underneath it is a single configuration. I'm going to change the name of this configuration. The usual way to do this is to right click, select properties, and then fill this in here, fill this dialog box in here. There's an easier way. If you just click, hold and release, then it should be available. So I'm going to call this a straight cut because I like to give my configurations names so that I know what they do. And I'm going to add another configuration. So if I hover above the name of the file and I right click, I can select this first command and say add configuration. And then it's going to ask me for a name, which I'm going to call swept cut. I'm going to highlight this and copy it, Control C, before I say OK. The only reason I want to do that is just to show you in the bottom you can associate display states with configurations. I'll get into that later, why that would be useful. So in this display state, I'm going to click and hold the same trick. Yes, there we go. And then just say Control V so that I've got that name. What you'll see now is that if I go back to the first, if I double click on this first, or single click on this first one, double click on this first configuration, that the display state has remained the same. So I can right click on this and say add a display state. And then I'm going to call that one straight cut. Cut, there we go. All right, so straight cut is associated with that configuration. I think I can move these around. Can't remember. Let's just... Okay, so straight cut is associated with swept cut. When I want swept cut to be associated with swept cut, all you do is double click on the display state that you want to be associated with the relevant configuration. So I'm going to go back to straight cut and then hop across to the feature manager, and I just want to point out that I've got one feature in here, which is revolve. And under the configuration manager, I've got two configurations. So if you create a new configuration, it'll proceed from the point at which you created it. So I'm going to continue with straight cut, and I'm going to create a cut through this thing. So I'm going to go to front plane, sketch, and then straight away I'm going to put in a center line. Oops, and so that center line I can see is not aligned with anything. It's connected to the bottom, but it's not aligned. So if I just click on it, you'll get the context menu on the... that's wrong. If you click on something, you'll get the context menu. If it disappears, then just go back to where you last saw it and hit the control button, and it'll reappear. And that will give you all of the possible relationships that you can apply to this. Obviously, I can't make this horizontal. Well, I can, but it'll then just make the line horizontal. I want to make it vertical. And that's what it does, it makes it vertical. So step one. Step two would be to create a cutout shape, which is going to look something like this. And now I want this shape to be mirrored. So I'm going to select that shape. And then I've got the mirror. I've got some of my most used commands in the heads up bar at the top. I'll show you how to do that in the next video. For now, you can right click, and then inside the context menu with the icons, you'll get these two mirror entity commands. You can use a dynamic mirror entity if you're going to start from scratch, but I'm going to use just this one. And then on the left hand side in the feature manager, you can select the bar which says mirror about and then select that line. Oops, there we go. Okay, and then right click. And we're done. And now, so whatever I do to the left, to the right hand side will be done to the left because they're mirrored. So I want to establish a dimension between the origin and this one. Let's make it 30. I want to establish an angle, which I'm going to give as 4. And then I want to make that height constant, so that whatever I do with this, the height stays the same. And then let's give this an overall dimension, although I could have done it differently. And then I need one more dimension, which is something between these two lines, or the top, whichever one is more important to me. So I'm going to give this 25, right? And so now I can exit. To exit, I'm just going to hit escape to get rid of my one command, and then you can double click to exit a sketch, which will immediately put it into a 3D or an isometric view. And it also highlights the sketch, so you can use that sketch. And you can see now there are a whole lot more commands that are available to be used with that sketch because I've got a basic feature. So I want to extrude cut over here. My preferred method is to go to my shortcut bar, but I'm going to use this one for now. And I'm pretty sure you know how to use this. So you can go from different places if you want to, like surface. You could select this surface. Won't know what to do with it because there's no fixed point, but you could do that. So we're going to go from the sketch plane, and then we're going to go through all both, like that, and then say OK. All right, and so we have our first configuration. If I double click on the swept cut command, it'll go back to just the revolve feature, and it'll leave out the next command, so that now I can create a new configuration without having to worry about what you can do here. If you right click, you can suppress the command. So if I suppress that, it'll actually suppress it for that configuration. But if I go back to straight cut, it won't suppress it. So this is very, very intelligent. It like figures out where you're going and what you're doing, and it keeps track. And it's it's one of the most useful features to know about, because within a single file you can create different designs entirely. So I'm going to go and create another cut. I'm going to do something very similar. I always start with the center line unless I'm specifically not doing something that needs to be centered. I'm going to create a similar command. Similar sketch. What am I saying? Command, right? And I'm going to replicate the error that I made in class to show you where I went wrong with that, what you can do to fix it so that you are informed. Let's go with that. Go. Okay. And then let's just put some basic dimensions in first, and then I'll explain that little bit about not having this as a horizontal piece. So right, I'm going to leave that one off. I think I showed you in class that you could associate a line with a feature or part of a feature. So I want those to be collinear. What I did there is I clicked, held the shift button down, clicked and selected the second line, and I'm going to make them collinear, so that line stays with the top of this plug no matter what I try and do. I want this to be vertical, and I want to perhaps dimension from there to, let's go to this point. Oh, it says 90. Let's go to this bottom point. No, we can't. Right, doesn't matter. This is not super important. It's just to make sure that it sticks out enough. And then let's give this an angle as well. So let's make this 5 degrees. And let's give this a width. So that's 28. Right, fully constrained. What if I want this line to be angled in a certain way? So let me take the horizontal constraint off, and you'll see that immediately all of these interior lines go blue. They're no longer what they should be. And because I made this line vertical, I can now use that to create an angle between these two, 90, which is the same as saying that this line is horizontal. But if I double click on this and I say, or single click, and it says I make it 80, it'll alter the angle. So I've pretty much got the same kind of functionality as the one where the line is just horizontal, except I've got this added feature in which if I want to change it, I can. So the point about this is that selecting your constraints and your dimensions it's very flexible, and you can choose different ways of doing it to suit your purposes. I'm going to just redimension this as a horizontal dimension, like that. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to go back to 90 for now. There we go. Let's make that a bit taller. Let's say 30. All right. And now I'm going to exit this. So double click. So it's now the sketch is available to be used, but I want to create something a little bit more exciting, which is what I tried to do in class. So let's go to the sketch. I'm going to replicate exactly what I did in class. So I've selected a 3-point curve. I put one part on one end and the other part on the other, and then got them to go somewhere in the middle. And then you can see this is intersecting that line. I can shift select both points, and I want them to be horizontal so that when I put a dimension in, for the height, that height applies across both of these. So let's make that 23. Oh, what did I do? 23. And I now also want to, I can either give this a radius or I can give it a height. If I want to give it a height, I can go from there. And if this center point doesn't appear, I can just hit the shift key and it'll go to the highest point on that curve. So 32. Right, so that's fully constrained, and it's available for use. So I'm going to say I want a swept cut, which is what I did in class. I'm going to select this sketch as my profile and that as the path. And you'll notice that it does what I wanted it to do in class, up to the point where I went bidirectional, where it says, we're not happy with that. The reason for this is, I'm going to exit this. I'll show you the reason in a moment. It has to do with this button here, align with end faces. But let's just show you in a sort of a more graphic way what's happening, and then you understand why this happened. So I'm going to do this profile as a positive rather than a cut. I'm going to say, let's give us, create a new part. That's my profile, that's my path, and I can select this bidirectional button, and I'm going to do it. Okay, so I actually have two bodies now inside here. Do I? No, I don't. Let's just go back to this. Options. Merge result. Right, this little button here, merge result, is going to be important later on. For now, I've got two bodies. So if you have a look in the left-hand side here, I've got three, in fact. I've got 1, 2, and 3. Yes, because those are two separate bodies. So we've got three bodies in here. That's sort of not important for this video, but it kind of is in a way. Later on, you'll find out why. So what is happening here is when I'm trying to sweep cut this thing, the sweep is not meeting this face here. in a neat way. It's actually cutting it off, all right? So you can see those two are doing that sort of thing. So if I'm going to delete this now, or I'm going to just for now suppress it so it's no longer available. And let's use that same sketch. So I can go to these two here and I can say swept cut. And if I click on the middle button and I unclick this align with both faces, it'll give me that cut, no problem, as long as I don't align with end faces, because it doesn't know how to align with this radius. It's a big problem for it. So if I say yes, okay, because it would result unable to create this feature because it would result in a zero thickness geometry. And that's because at the point at which this curve is meeting the top of that surface, there's a point at which there's no geometry, that's zero. So that's a 0-point geometry error. That means it can't actually, it's physically impossible. So I've got to go back and I've got to alter this sketch. So in fact, I'm going to delete this just to make it easier. So these sketches are now available for altering, and I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to take off that collinear one and then just drag this line up a bit. And then give this, maybe we'll do from that point, that line to here. So I'm drawing in 3D just to show you that you can also draw in 3D. You're not always obliged to be normal to. Normal to just means perpendicular to. It actually has a more useful meaning than that, but I'll explain that later. So here my two sketches are. Let's try and do this swept cut again. There might still be a problem. I'll show you what that second problem will be. So there's my profile, there's my path. If I go like this, and I go to options, and align with end faces, it should do it. Right, it has done it. The other part of what could have been a problem in the sketch is, if I go to edit sketch, is the length of this profile sketch. In this case, it wasn't a problem, but if this had been too short, if something about the profile meant that it created another 0-point geometry, that would have been a problem. So I would simply have had to lengthen this curve so it didn't meet these points. Right, so we're almost there. The beauty of this is you can swap between these configurations, and also you can do all sorts of other things. Like for instance, I showed you that angle thing. Like if I want to just change it on the fly, whoops, let's get that out the way. So let's go like this, right? So say we want that instead, and I want this to come down by, no, that's not the right one. This one to come down by, say, that much. I've got an on-the-fly understanding of what it is that I'm making, and I can then, once I've decided I like it, keep it. So the last little bit was just a little bit of detailing. I'm going to use this configuration to do it, so I will then click on a feature. I need to show you how to set up that you can see through these things. You can, of course, use this display style and go to this wireframe one, and then you'll be able to select through. No, you can't. All right, I'll have to show you the setting. I'm not going to do it now. So I'm going to select this one here and that one there. And then right click and then go to fillet. I think I made this a chamfer in class. Let's make it a chamfer and let's alter that to say 6 or something. Go. Right, and then I think I also selected these. I'm holding the shift button down, by the way. I think you can see in this little block what I'm doing. So if you don't know what it is I'm doing, just look in this block and you'll see. And then right click, I'm going to give that a fillet of 3, maybe 4 as well, maybe 6. It looks better. Right. And then I'm going to put in smaller dimensions in on these two lines, right click, fillet, make this 2. And here I'm going to deliberately create a radius or a fillet which is too large, and just to show you what happens. So this is a principle in modeling that you always go from largest feature to smallest. So in this case I've gone from the largest feature, which is is obviously the outside, the revolve, and then the cut sweep, and then so you do your major features first, and then you add the chamfers and the fillets in later, and you should go from largest fillet to smallest, just because geometrically that makes things possible. Right, so it's actually chosen a whole edge. I don't want it to choose an edge, so I'm going to delete this. All right, and I wanted to create just this one here. No, it's all right. So what it's doing is this button here called tangent propagation. If you have it selected, it'll propagate. In other words, it'll say what's tangent to this, and it'll propagate it. I want it to not propagate, and I want those to be a nice large radius, so 6, like that. Okay, so far so good. But you can see that it has not created a nice edge over here. So if I want to, I can just drag within the feature manager, which is a very powerful feature, which we'll talk about more later on. As long as I click on the icon and not on the name, although the name might also work. Sorry, yes. What I'd done in class is I'd done a drag select. If you drag select, you select a whole lot of features. And what I meant to do is click, drag, select. So I'm going to move the one feature above the other. Oh. All right. So let's just Control Z. I put it in the wrong place. Did I? All right, so what it's probably done, let's just go and have a look, is done tangent propagation. No, it hasn't. It's chosen the face. All right, so if you get an error like that, sometimes it's best just to go into the feature and see what's happening. This has chosen the face instead of an edge. I want to delete that face and just re-establish it. These are the edges I want. Okay, now you can see that the smaller fillet has propagated itself all the way around. So we'll deal with this in more detail, this kind of difficulty in, well, not difficulty, but what the best steps are to take in modeling anything. The one thing I didn't show you in class was how to shell this. I'm pretty sure you know how to do that already. If you go to, in features, you have a look in the third tab, there's a shell button, and you click on this face. You click on the face you don't want, that you want to disappear, and then let's make this 1.2 for instance, and see if it'll do it. There we go, it shelled it. All right, so I don't really like that. That's much too thin. What you can do is you can drag these dimensions out. If you wait for your, let's just select that feature. Right, so if you wait for your button to go into, it's not going to do it. All right, if I click on this at the moment, it's going to select that little point, and it's going to actually increase the thickness, which is not really what not the most ideal way of doing things. So you can see it's done it. What I really want is I want to move this dimension out into a place where I can, there we go. Okay, so you're just got to make sure that when you select this thing, you don't select the point, the change point, whatever that's called. I've got to find. And now I can click on this, and I can change this to 2.5. So that's a single click, change it, and there's the parametricity coming into play again. I think that covers basically what we did in class. If it didn't, and you want something else that I should remind you of, please let me know in class. Thank you for watching. I will present the next video maybe on the weekend.